Good evening, everyone. My name is Frank Fenimore. I'm the Executive Director of the Cleveland and Woodley Park Village. Cleveland and Woodley Park Village is one of 13 villages in the District of Columbia, and we work collaboratively through an organization that we've created called the DC Villages Collaborative. We have 103 registrants tonight, so many people may be from around the city. Perhaps you're not affiliated with any organization yet, any village yet. You can always find which village is your home village at dcvillages.org. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started tonight on our presentation on medical alert devices. And so I want to let you know that this will be recorded and we will post this recording to our blog on our website, which is cwpv.org. And you just scroll down on the homepage and you will see it. Everyone is muted, and I ask you to please stay muted, and that's just so that someone's phone ringing or a television or something doesn't capture the spotlight and distract the presentation. So if you have questions during the session for our presenter, I'd ask you to please use the chat function, and you can enter your questions or comments in the chat, and our presenter, Richard Caro, will be following the chat. He may not answer your question immediately, but he's really great. I've worked with him before about following those questions and eventually getting to them. Um, uh, and at the very end, I can tell you that if there's time, we will open it up, and so people could then possibly be on camera if you wish to do so. So at this point, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Richard Caro, who has a public benefit company called Tech Enhanced Life, and they have presented to us several times, as well as with the Foggy Bottom West End Village. And they have a group of people, which Dr. Caro would talk to us about, called the Longevity Explorers, which was really captivating to me when I was first introduced to him, where a group of older adults actually review products. And so they're really potential users looking at the products that they're reviewing. And so to me, that lends a lot of credibility, and why I particularly wanted Dr. Caro to be able to present to us. So with that, I will turn this over to Dr. Richard Caro, and he can start off the presentation and perhaps tell us a little bit more about himself. And Dr. Caro.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Frank. Let me just share my screen here and then we'll get started. Okay. Well, first of all, thanks very much for coming, everybody. I'm in San Francisco. I'm not sure you all realize that, but it's always, I think the fun thing about Zoom and the post-COVID era is we've all learned how to have these cross-country conversations. I am going to start with a presentation on the topic you can see on the screen right now, which is calling for help, medical alerts and other solutions. And you're very, very welcome to put questions in the chat. I think the more interactive it is, the better. And at the end, you're welcome to ask, questions out loud if you want to. I encourage you to try and put your questions in the chat as we're going along, because sometimes they get lost if we wait till the end. Okay. What we're going to talk about today is a couple of different areas. First of all, if you think about it, people always ask about medical alerts, which are a type of product, but really the problem we're trying to solve is calling for help in specific situations. And there are some interesting emerging trends beyond what you might call a medical alert that I'm going to touch on a bit. And then we'll talk about medical alerts and if one's interested in having one, how you'd approach finding the right one. And before I go on, I just want to give a little plug because this talk is going to be based on an updated version of one that I gave a year or two ago as part of our seminar series. You can see the titles of this seminar series here on the screen. I like to think that it captures a decade's worth of learning of older adults and technology and what's relevant. And those talks are all video recorded on the Tech Enhance Life website. They're a year or two out of date now, but they're still pretty current. So anyway, if you end up thinking today was useful, you might want to browse and find some of these other ones too. Okay, let's talk about calling for help. So just to kind of have everyone on the same page, this is really the situation people worry about, where somebody falls and can't get up, or has a heart attack, or a stroke, or any one of a number of things that mean they're having an emergency and they would like some help. And if they do it with their spouse nearby, maybe that's okay, but often they're alone. So that's the fundamental essence of the problem. The challenge is that there's kind of a bewildering array of different products all claiming to solve this situation. And we first started to look at this a long time ago now. I think it might have been 2016, because we were giving some talks at one of the villages in California, and they said, how do we decide what to buy? And if you read the marketing material, they all say they're all great, but they're all very different. And so we tried them all out and tried to make sense of it all. And that was kind of a popular study. And so ever since, we've tried to keep that, the body of work updated. So to sort of put all that in context, we've been looking at this on and off since 2016. We refreshed the content most recently a few months ago. And so I'm going to try and give you the perspective of all that right now. I think the most important takeaway is that there's no such thing as a best medical alert or a best solution to this problem, even though if you look on the internet, it will all be about the best this and the best that, because that's the way that they get you to click on it. And then, these are all advertising driven models. So there's no such thing as a best something, but what there is a best version for a specific person. Let me just say that again. So the way I think about it is, first you have to decide, okay, when somebody says, what should I get? You've got to put them into a little bit of a category, right? You've got to ask a bit about them and their lifestyle and a few other things. And once you've decided which category they fit in, then there probably is one or two or three best products for them, but they will not be the same as what somebody else might need. So there's lots of well-meaning social workers and healthcare providers and things that say, well, we heard that company X is the best. But that's probably not quite the right way to think about it. And I'll try and give you the tools today to think about it a bit differently. One of the problems is there's a big shortage of objective guidance. While there's lots on the internet, it's mostly material that's written by the companies that sell them the products, or that's written with the idea of selling particular products. So it's often not terribly objective, and that's a bit frustrating. We have a different approach. We're independent, we're objective, we're a public benefit corporation, which has a mission you can see here. This particular piece of work we're discussing has no sponsorship, no sponsored content, no ads. You might well ask how we sustain it. It's sustained by a small group of people like me who think of this as kind of a philanthropic hobby project, I guess. So that's kind of important. Unlike everything else you'll see, this is not designed to sell you any particular thing. The team that we put together initially was intentionally multidisciplinary. We put together an advisory panel with all sorts of different types of expertise. We draw heavily on our community of longevity explorers, who are people very much like you, probably, with an interest in getting involved in this sort of stuff. I did the sort of lead work, which is, I guess, why I get the pleasure of talking to you. I have a technical background originally, and then I've been an entrepreneur for quite a long time. And what's different to most of the other stuff that you see is that we actually go out and get the products. We used to buy them all. Now we sometimes ask to borrow them, and we try them out. And this is actually a picture of me wearing a bunch of them. We typically get the products, we wear them around for a week or two, we try them out every day, we call for help every day in various different places, and we've got a list of things we think are differentiating factors between different products. So we put them through a little set of tests, and then we write up the results, and you can read the reviews of them on the Tech Enhanced Life website, actually. Okay, that's the introduction, and that's kind of my why you should be, why what I'm telling you might be worth listening to story. Let's talk about the bigger picture of calling for help. Most of this is going to be about medical alerts, but I think it's really important to realize that there are some very interesting emerging trends that are relevant to calling for help. Probably most of you know about Alexa and other voice type products, and now emerging artificial intelligence ideas, AI like ChatGPT and things built on that. Lots of new ones under development. And what's interesting about some of these things is that you can say to them, hey, whatever, in this case, Alexa, hey, something or other, please call my daughter. And it will, if you set it up correctly, it will call them. You can even purchase an add-on service that lets them call an emergency responder, very similar to a medical alert. So that's kind of a completely different modality to a button that you press. It's got some issues at the moment, which I'm happy to talk more about in questions. But, just to mention one simple one, it only works when you're nearby the thing you can talk to. So that's a bit of a limitation. But I think as AI becomes more powerful in the next 2 or 3 years, these capabilities will just become more important. So that's the first emerging trend. The second emerging trend is that it used to be that age tech and medical alerts were its own little universe of rather ugly, unexciting products, very non-aspirational. And there's still a lot of that around, but the world of consumer electronics, like Apple Watches and things, has increasingly started to converge and meet some of the needs we're talking about, like calling for help. And so I think actually that's extremely important. And when I start to talk about medical alerts, in my mind, you can use a smartwatch as a type of medical alert, although it has some differences. So I'll be including them as one of the subcategories. And I think the really interesting aspect is, well, some of the watches in this picture don't look so glamorous. Some consumer electronics smartwatches are kind of aspirational and cool and do lots of other things like measure your steps. And so for the first time, instead of having to get a kind of stigmatizing, ugly medical alert, you can potentially get a cool thing that's just like your kids have, except it also works as a medical alert. So this is a trend that I think is pretty important and will just become more important as time passes. Okay, let's drill down into the medical alerts, which emergency response systems, medical alerts, those are the same. They mean the same thing in my mind. So I think the way I look at it is there are different flavors of these products. And typically, once you decide what sort of person someone is, they're most suited for a particular flavor. And I'm going to talk about the flavors. I'm not really going to spend time talking about specific brands, although if you've got questions, you're welcome to ask them. But I am going to help you understand how, when you see an advertisement, how you can decide which flavor or which bucket of product it fits in. And then we'll be talking about how to match you with a particular flavor. So I'm now going to run through a few different categories of product. This one is the original old ugly version, which still is sold by lots of companies. And I call it an at-home wearable. And what that means is it's got a thing you wear around your neck, a pendant, and you can see that in the picture, the little white thing on the black string that's down near the quarter in the bottom middle of the picture. You wear that around your neck. And it has what's called a base station, which is the white box of electronics with the big red help button on it. And that base station has to go somewhere in your house. And the pendant, when you press the button, sends a signal to that base station, which then calls the call center. And it's got several important characteristics. First of all, the wearable can be quite small, and that has to do with the technology inside it. It can be, in fact, smaller than some of the other more powerful products we'll see later on. So that's a good thing. And it can have a battery that lasts for a long time. However, it really only works when you're within a certain distance of that base station. So a good way to think about it is it works at home. It might work in the garden, depending on how big your house is, but it definitely does not work when you go to the grocery store or, for a walk. So that's category one. Category two came along probably a decade or so ago now, and it does away with the base station. It just has one piece. So there are three separate products in this picture. Each one is its own separate product. And what it is a pendant that you wear around your neck with a button. And it's quite a lot bigger than the at-home ones I just showed you, bigger and heavier, although they've got much better over the last few years. The really important thing about it is it can go more or less anywhere. In other words, it works at home probably. I'll explain what I mean by probably in a minute. And it probably works when you go to the park or the grocery store. The key thing that determines whether it works or not is it needs to be in range of some sort. It needs to be able to receive a cell signal. So if your cell phone doesn't work in your house, this won't either. Or if you like to go for a walk in the wilderness somewhere miles away from anything where there's no cell reception, well, this won't work there either. But in most places you go, in most people's houses, in most of the rooms, and in most shopping centers and parks and things, everywhere you can get a cell signal, this will work. So that's kind of, it broadens out the applicability quite a lot. And it comes with quite a lot of extra features, like it has some GPS built in, which means the call center knows where you are. So if you fall and hurt yourself, you don't have to be able to say, I'm at the corner of Jones Street and, Mission Drive. It knows where you are and it can send help. So that's a plus. However, if you look at it, it's still kind of big and ugly. And that's something that, people see as a negative, although often that's offset by the positive of being able to call for help. Then we come to the smartwatches, which I kind of touched on a bit. And the big thing with these, the benefit is potentially, for some people, they feel like they're much more stylish and much less stigmatizing. Some people don't like them, and that's fine, but some people do. So that's a really important detail, because one of the key aspects of this type of product is a lot of people get them and then don't wear them. And if you think about it, if you've got it and it's sitting in your bedside table when you fall, it's not going to help you much. So almost the most important thing is, does it look like something you would wear? There's a few other things about these products. Quite a lot of them have extra features that some people like counting steps and things. However, they're not quite as easy to use. Well, some of them are not at all easy to use compared to a simple pendant with a button, and none of them are as easy to use. So if you've got someone who's starting to have some cognition issues, or maybe has very significant arthritis and has trouble finding the right piece to the right small button to press on the watch, those are all kind of negative aspects. But for healthy, cognitively fit people who are used to things like watches and don't have a problem figuring out what button to press, there's some benefits. Until recently, these products did not have, except for the Apple Watch, most of these other products until recently did not have full detection, which I'll talk about in a minute. But in the last 12 months, most of them now do. And so this is, so that's good, because that's a desirable feature. And it makes this category of product much more powerful than it used to be. I see an interesting question there, but I'll come back to it. Anyway, so to keep going through the categories, sometimes when we talk to people, they say, you know, I've got a cell phone and I carry it everywhere. And actually, if I need help, I'm just going to call my daughter or I'm going to call 911. And that's okay. That's certainly a scenario, right? That's not quite as perfect, but some people don't need perfect. And the reason it's not quite as perfect is you have to get the cell phone. It's not attached to you necessarily. You have to find the app. You have to make the call. So, if you fell and hit your head, you're not going to be doing all those things. So it's maybe not so perfect, but some people think it's a perfectly acceptable approach. It does not have fall detection, but by listing the pluses and minuses, I'm trying to give you a flavor of the trade-offs rather than say any one of these is better than the others. Because as I said at the beginning, I think for different people, different ones are suitable. On the right, there's a picture of a sort of brooch, and well, what do you call it? A piece of jewelry, a pendant jewelry thing. And this is an interesting kind of niche. The way this works is that piece of jewelry, the blue stone inside the silver surrounding on the right, it's a pendant that you can press like those ones I showed you before. So if you press, I think it's the blue bit that you press, or maybe there's a button behind, I forget. But anyway, you press that when you need to summon help. And the way this works is it sends a signal to your phone, and then your phone calls for help. So you have to have both the phone and that pendant with you, which is maybe for some people not as simple as just having a pendant by itself, but it's much more attractive, some people think. So that's an interesting little twist. Okay, those are the main categories. There's lots of little subcategories and things that I'm not going to bore you with. If you've got specific questions later, you're welcome to ask them. Well, I'm getting some great questions. I'm just going to keep going a little bit more, but I promise I'm going to get to those. Okay, I want to talk on about a few of the key things that you have to decide. There's not right answers to these. The first question is about who will respond. In other words, when you press that button, there's a few different things that could happen. It could call 911. That's how an Apple Watch works. But if you want to call it because you got lost on the freeway or because you had a breakdown or some other reason like that, it's not really 911 you want to call. Or it could call what's called a call center responder. And in that case, that's a person, not 911, but a person that's trained to talk to you and figure out what's wrong, and then either call 911 for you or give you advice or call someone else, or they've got a range of things they can do. Or when you press the button, you could have it call your daughter. And that might be good because maybe you don't want to be bothering the responder or 911, but what if your daughter's not there? What if she doesn't know what to do? So there's pluses and minuses of all these things, right? This is just a bit of a more elaborate explanation of all that I'm perhaps not going to dwell on, but there's pluses and minuses. The traditional industry has it set up so that when you press the button, it calls a call center. The call center is able to do triage, and if necessary, they call 911. That's the traditional approach. I think it might be maybe the best in terms of perfection, but it comes at a cost. There's a fee, a monthly fee for that. Whereas with something like the Apple Watch, which calls 911 directly, it doesn't have a monthly fee. So cost comes into it. Some people really like the idea of just calling their neighbor or their daughter. I think that's a personal choice, but you can certainly think of examples where something might fall through the cracks if you set it up like that. So this is one of those things where you really have to decide what you care about most. Do you want the most perfect performance? It always calls help of the right sort when you want it. Do you care about cost most? Do you care about speed of response, which is another thing that varies across these different categories? There's sort of a list. You just have to figure out what you care about most. So that's the first thing to decide. Do you want a monitored alert system where it calls a responder, or an unmonitored alert system where it just goes straight to 911 or calls a friend? Then you have to decide whether you're okay with one that only works at home, like those, like the first ones I showed you, which don't work when you leave the house, or do you have a lifestyle where you're often going out and about and you'd like to make sure it covers you? I found most people that come to these sort of calls really would be better off with the out and about version. But if you have someone who never leaves their house and is very frail, then they don't need that. And then you have to decide on the form factor, what it looks like and where you wear it. And so you can see on this, there's lots of different possibilities. There's the smartwatch, there's the small pendant, there's the big pendant, there's a thing that you can wear on your belt. Some of these pictures are out of date, old products that don't exist anymore, but there's newer ones that do the same thing. So you have to say to yourself, well, what would I realistically wear? The next thing you have to decide is, do you want something that automatically detects when you fall or not? Let me talk you through that. On the left, an example of a conventional pendant without fall detection. So what that means is, imagine you fall over and you break your hip and you're lying there. Nothing happens unless you physically press that button. That's the one on the left. That's probably okay if you're, on the ball. If you have a heart attack or a stroke and you fall, you probably aren't going to be pressing the button and then nothing happens. That's the one on the left. That's the original old-fashioned idea that a lot of people consider is a bit outdated. On the right is the one that automatically detects falls. Most products, by the way, you can have either a fall detection one or a not fall detection one. So usually this is like an extra choice. You just added on that capability. So the one on the right, you fall and you break your hip and it detects that fall ideally. They're not perfect, of course, but at least some of the time, hopefully most of the time, it detects the fall. And when it detects the fall, the good ones speak to you. A voice comes out of them and says, Mrs. Smith, we see that you fell. Do you want us to call for help? And if you didn't really fall, if you just stumbled or sat down heavily or something, then you either press a button to cancel the call for help or you talk to it, depending on the product, and say, no, it's okay, I'm all right. But if you don't respond, it will call automatically for help. So this is kind of powerful in certain situations. If you have a stroke, you fall or you hit your head, in any of those situations, this will, assuming it works as designed, it will call for help without you having to do anything. I personally think this auto fall detection is kind of a good feature. One of the questions, though, that I got is, what about overly sensitive fall detectors? What if person has removed their hearing aids and can't hear the device calling them? Yes. Well, that's Susan. Thank you, Susan. That's a very good question. I think you sort of have to make a trade-off. Well, first of all, you want to get, ideally, you'd get the product with the most perfect fall detection, but unfortunately, it's very hard to decide which one has the most perfect fall detection because all the companies claim theirs is the best, and they refuse to share any actual data on the topic. So I don't personally know which is the best, and I don't believe anyone else does either. But it's sort of a trade-off, right? like I have an Apple Watch and it has fall detection turned on, and every now and again it starts buzzing and says, we detected a fall. Do you want me to do anything? And I sort of press the button to cancel it. I don't find that a big challenge. But for some people, you might. On the other hand, is it okay to not have anything notice when you have a stroke and fall over? You just have to make that judgment call depending on what scenario you're most worried about. While I'm on these questions, someone else said, what about in the shower? Pretty much all these products are water resistant and work in the shower. The companies recommend you keep them on in the shower. A lot of people don't, but if you're worried about falling in the shower, then you just need to get one that's water resistant, at least to the level of a shower, which is almost all of them, but it's you can check when you look at them, and then you're supposed to wear it in the shower. Okay, let's see what else I got here. Yes, this is kind of an important one. It's often underappreciated. All these products have a battery involved of some sort, independent typically, and they require different frequencies of charging. With, as you might expect, the best ones need to be charged more often than the less good ones. If you're just fine charging something every night, like if you already charge your phone and your watch and just one more thing to charge every night, then this is probably not a big deal for you. But some people have a real problem with that. They can't handle the plugs, or they forget, or whatever. And so some of the products, for example, the one on the right, the most primitive, simple one without fall detection, that comes with a battery in it that you only have to change annually. I think there might even be some where it's 18 months. So that's the sort of thing where someone else can make a note that they have to come by once a year and change your battery. So the question of which battery charging regimen is acceptable for a given person, that's a pretty important detail, actually. Burke says, one of your pictures says no location. How can that be? Well, Burke, that can be because for the device to know where you are, it has to have certain technology in it, typically GPS, but there are some other ones too. And that particular product in that picture does not have that technology in it. So it doesn't really know where you are. Actually, that exact product knows where you are roughly, but not at all precisely, using a different technology. And so the idea with that is you need to tell a provider where you are when you press the button. Okay, how to select an actual product. So a good way to think about this, if you wanted to buy something after this talk, you would go back through the talk and you'd try and decide for yourself of all these trade-offs, which ones you care about. And then you'd have like a checklist, right? And then you have the job of winnowing through various products. We've done a lot of stuff on our website where we've tried to help people make that decision. So I'd encourage you to go look there. And the way we used to have a complicated selection tool where you could put in various features you wanted, and it would spit out some specific products you could, that we thought were good. We've discontinued that because a lot of people said it was too complicated, and anyway, it was a lot of work to keep up, and we just, since it's all, pro bono, we do it out of love. We just decided we didn't want to do that anymore. But most people didn't really want to use the selection tool anyway. I kept getting emails that said, that's all very interesting, Richard. You might be sitting there thinking this too, but just tell me what to buy. So we actually have a section on our website that says, just tell me what to buy, and about medical alerts. And the way we think about it is we ask you to pick a persona that is best describing the person that you are, or the person that you're buying this for. There's 5 of those personas. You can see them here: go, slow go, no go, need some care, 24/7 care. And there's a description of exactly what each of these is on our website. I won't go through it right now. But once you've decided that a person fits one of those categories, then the accompanying article tells you which flavors most people find are best for that type of person. So that's a way to narrow things down pretty quickly. There's a lot of stuff on the website, and I'm happy to talk more in questions because I'll be finished with this in a minute. But you know, there's product reviews, there's specific recommendations at the link that's on this slide that I'm sure will be in the blog post. There's an article called "Just Tell Me What to Buy" somewhere in this section of the Tech Enhanced Life website also. That's kind of the overview. I wanted to leave lots and lots of time for questions. So I'm just going to look at the questions in the chat and address them, and then maybe we can open it all up for anyone who wants to speak.